Hello, everybody. I'm John from Folla Capital, and we're just jacked that you're here. Thanks for making it. And if you're watching the recording, we welcome you too. And thrilled to have you here today. We're going to talk about our guest of honor, which is the crew from Old Glory Studios, one of our clients raising money under Reg CF. So we're thrilled to have them. That's a cool company. And we've got a couple of guests going to chime in on what they're up to as well. So how you doing, guys?
Doing well, John. Thanks.
Doing good. How are you?
Great. You look so handsome in all those squares. But let's just quickly go around the table. I know, like I said, our bios are in the console there, but let's just start with you, Lewis. What's your role in Old Glory Studios and anything you want to say about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Louis Manalo. I'm the co-founder and executive producer at Old Glory Studios. I've worked in the game industry now for about 10 years. Before that, I worked in the film and television industry. And I also, because pertinent to us, I served in the military in the 82nd Airborne from '02 through '04.
Great. Thanks, man. And for the record, I did too. So we're all brothers here, second brothers. Matt, how about you, man?
Not 82nd, but third ID, 2 to '06. Yeah, been 15 years in the gaming industry, co-founder and creative director on our Project Outflank. And yeah, just happy to be here. And thanks for coming to everybody. So
Great. And wearing the Army colors there. Good for you, man. Christian, how about yourself, man?
Grew up on military bases. My father served in the Air Force in Vietnam, so I have a background in certainly living among the military and all the respect that entails. I'm a video game writer. I have been for over 10 years and also a screenwriter in Hollywood and have multiple gaming awards for narrative gaming, which is my specialty, I suppose you could say. And very excited to be collaborating with Old Glory Studios.
Great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to what you have to say. I know these guys, Matt Lewis, more than I know you, but we spoke briefly earlier, and you got quite an impressive background. So thanks for making the time. Mike, last but not least, we saved the best for last, Mike. So you got the stage.
Oh, I'm not the best here. I'm not retired military, but I am the son of a man who retired Department of Defense, who was a civilian director on Fort Jackson in South Carolina. So also very close and to understanding a bit about our military. But I run an esports organization, so I've been involved in the video games industry and esports for about 20 years now. Started off as a professional gamer and kind of moved my way into entrepreneurship and advisement. And now I own one of the premier esports teams in the world. For those of you who don't know what esports are, we compete professionally in video games. So it's like owning a sports franchise, but instead of playing football or basketball, we compete in various popular video games that you see out there.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. So I'm really looking forward to your panel discussion here in a few minutes. So thanks for making it. Again, you can read more about these guys and contact them in your the bio section in your console. So a little bit about Folla Capital, real briefly. We are a regulated entity. We are registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we are an intermediary, and we help companies like Old Glory Studios raise capital. We raise capital because we're a broker dealer. We can raise capital among several what's called exemptions. Regulation crowdfunding is one of those exemptions, and it's the one we're using in this particular case. However, we are duty bound by the regulations to make sure that certain checks and balances are adhered to and rules are adhered to. And one of them is full disclosure. So just very briefly, this presentation, just want to disclose what we're going to talk about today does not in any way, shape, or form complete the information you need to make an investment decision. If you're considering an investment, we suggest that you review the documentation on our offering site, on our website, particularly a form called the Form C. It's like the master document that reveals all the risks associated with investing in general, particular to this investment. And these are all the regulatory uh, things that we have to disclose and disclosures that are in there, as well as other material information about the business projections and things like that. So I highly encourage you to visit the site if you are so inclined to be interested in an investment. This is what the offering site looks like. This is the documents tab. If you look real close in the middle there, if you click on the documents tab, you'll get to the documents I just mentioned. You'll also get to an executive summary as well as an investor presentation. And if you keep an eye on the site, you'll see updates I think there's a couple up there already, and you'll see other things, and you can ask questions on the site as well. So the site is what we at Folla Capital use to make sure we're disclosing all the necessary information relevant to the investment. And if you choose to invest, you click the green button up there in the upper right, and you start a process where you can execute your investment. So that's Folla Capital's role in all of this. We facilitate the process of investment. And the second role we play is MC at these great events that you are now experiencing. Without any further ado, let's get back to the real fun stuff here. Let's talk about the game. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you. We've got a couple of videos for you guys to bring this thing to life for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt to set up what we're about to see.
For sure. This is a trailer that's on our Steam page. Our Steam page is live, so go ahead and wish list that. It's Victory's Grave Outflank. Yeah, I'll let the video do the speaking. Let's go ahead and play the video.
All right, it's less than a minute long. We're going to play the video. It should play, and then we'll be back. So we'll talk about it. Enjoy the video.
Oh, nice.
Matt, what did we just see? Over to you, pal.
Yeah, you saw like a quick collage of what we've been working on. So what we're working on is called Victory's Grave Outflank. It's trying to go with the Milsim eSports route. What we're not is battle royale and this current extraction shooter environment. We're very much focused on having dynamic environments, team play focus, less on the individual and more on the team structure. We're really focusing more on team rewards and literally leaning heavy towards the esports direction and making a game that really brings people together to play in this environment of Milsim, which we think is a corner of the market that we need to head into. So when it comes to esports, yeah, like stuff with the mic, I believe it's the trend that's happening. It's a culture that's taking the world by storm, and it's going to be the new wave. Mike, what do you feel about the esports and what it's bringing to the world nowadays?
Yeah, so I think you hit on the point that esports in general is really a focus on teams, and a lot of games that we're seeing come out, they don't really have team integration into the games themselves. And so at the root, what I was really impressed by Matt and Lewis when they approached me and I saw what they were up to, their goals are to make it very team oriented. And so at the root of game development, when you're making a game, a lot of the games are really built. Yes, they have team based options and multiplayer and so on, but they don't make that their core focus to where you and your friends can set up as a team and then log basically a rank as a team inside the game, right? It's usually taking third party websites and all these other tournament providers to put on tournaments outside of the game's internal software. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And now I think more game publishers are interested in developing their games to have more focus on a team inside of their games as opposed to just individual players logging in and not facilitating anything much further than that. And yeah, I think that approach is very unique here. And it's the reason I'm here and I'm interested in working with these guys on the project.
Awesome. Yeah, the whole kind of inspiration was during my time in the military was like John and Lewis were in the 82nd. I was in the 3rd ID. So even within the military, there's teams within the big team, right? And we're all like trying to compete against each other, one team, one fight, but you want to be the best team. And so it's always been an inspiration of mine. I've loved the military and sports in general, like the NBA, NFL. They really put on a great presentation. And so leaning hard and heavy into that, I think is, like I said, a part of the market that has yet to be cornered. And I think we're onto something great here. Not following the overall global trend, which is, like I said, battle royales and extraction shooters, but taking us back down to the route of a proper game, like a team-based game with a hard competition. Lewis, I'll let you speak
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah, no. So in addition to this is just a first game, one of the things that we want to establish our studio with, but to contrast us with to say what a lot of other studios will do with like a traditional AAA game would try to be all things to all players. Like Mike was saying that like the PvP might be part of the game, but then there would also be a single player campaign, which is more narrative focused, right? But for what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it's, a lot of these games, honestly, in the last couple of years, if you follow any of the news in video game news, there are a lot of companies out there who've made some really big bets that have not paid off, right? There have been a few that have paid off, but there are probably many more that haven't. So what part of our strategy as a studio is that instead of trying to throw everything into one game, what we're trying to do is portion it out into different games. So this game we're talking about, Outflank, would be the PvP focus. And as we've been discussing, we can really go deep into how focused that is. Then we'll also have a narrative focused game, which is something that Christian will be working on. So maybe Christian, you can expand on the kind of advantages you have narratively in terms of the world, and then also in terms of just what a individual game will have with that kind of setup.
Yeah, it's kind of part of what we call world building. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's maybe somewhat self explanatory, which is just all the elements that go into the world to create a cohesive world. And because players like to have, all gamers tend to want to play different types of games at different types of the day, etc. You can go into the PvP mode and go into full on combat mode, or if you're feeling more like a story mode, there'll be another game that I'll be working on that'll be more narrative focused, but they're connected. The stories will be connected inside of this world, inside of this universe. And so it's a really great opportunity for players to, traverse all these different geographies and narrative or non-narrative, because once again, it's a matter of form follows function with the games. And some games you just want to focus on the action, and some games you might want to focus a little bit more on the story and the characters, etc. That'll be my, so to speak, detail, is to look over the narrative elements and working with these awesome team and the awesome, what I think is going to be some really unique kind of gameplay and unique story elements that are going to go into this game. And we can talk about that more later on as they develop. But I love the whole idea of having this kind of different game where you go into one world and play one type of game, and you go into another world and play another type of game, but it's all connected. And that's a cool, unique thing also, is to create all these different forms in the video game. And my experiences with narrative, and that's something that a lot of players love to get into, the story and the emotion and the characters, so to speak. And other players may not want to, so they can play another type of game. So I think there'll be something for everybody here. It's a buffet. It's a game buffet, so to speak.
Yeah. So I think it's comparable for those, and for anybody who's watching who isn't a gamer, who doesn't understand like what we're doing. So from the consumer side, it's almost like when you have cable TV, maybe you only want to watch like Clint Eastwood movies on TNT. You still end up paying for CNN also, which nobody's watching. But what we're doing is we're breaking that up. So it'll also be more affordable for players to just get the PvP game. But if they also want the narrative game, or if they only want the narrative game, they can buy that separately. So it's an advantage for the players, and also as if you want to look at it from an investment point of view, it's also like much less risk. So cool. So I don't know, Matt, maybe we can expand a little bit more on the kind of league stuff that we've been thinking about, like internally.
Yeah, like literally, like I was mentioning before with the NBA, NFL, like leaning hardcore into that league aspect, integrating that with our product, like with the game, would really allow players to create and define their character, which is now not just an individual character on their screen, but it is their team. It's literally, imagine fantasy football within a first person shooter esports aspect. Like you can build and manage your team within the product, set your schedules and everything else. So for us, I think it's so exciting to think about, because it's just, the fun aspect and the drama for PvP comes within that dynamic interaction between the teams and the different players within them. And then
Yeah,
like with
maybe
Christian,
Mike, you can give us a real world example from Sapporo over the weekend or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We just had a team competing in Sapporo, Japan, in front of a live audience in one of the biggest stadiums in Japan, in front of 13,000 people. It was like a 45,000 seat stadium, but we basically took half of it. And yeah, one of that's the reality of it. We're operating teams we fill stadiums, we fill arenas. I've sold out Barclays Center with our teams competing there, and we've sold out biggest arenas in the world, all over the world. And this is absolutely global. It's not a lot of these AAA games that are going out now are reaching audiences in just pretty much every part of the world. And so what's exciting is, as Matt was mentioning, if you build these features inside the game, that's a really unique differentiator now. And I think more game publishers will get hip onto that. But I think these guys have a head start and on the thinking that way. And then not only do you end up with a game, you end up as an investment, you end up with a media property when you do this. The league itself, the competition itself becomes media, becomes content. It, in and of itself creates value as a business. It can be a large side business. And that's why a lot of major game publishers, to be quite frank, went and scrambled to try and create these league ecosystems around these large AAA titles that they have. For example, I played Call of Duty professionally. I worked for Activision Blizzard as an advisor. I've designed features in the franchise Call of Duty, a lot of which are still in the game 10 years later after I did my work at the studios. And what's great is just you get that longevity when you do this. You create these features in the game, you make this kind of a cultural competition around your game, and yeah, you get a lot of ancillary benefits like a media property or just content that you can monetize, brand partnerships, etc.
Yeah, I think
That's, you nailed it, man. Nailed it.
yeah. Again, to bring it back to a broader focus, I think a lot of what our mission is as a studio is to give players a lot of different ways to care, because it's undeniable that video games are an emotional medium, like for the player, is because they're very often they're participating in whatever drama it is, whether it's on an esport or whether it's in like a more narrative type game. The kind of loyalty that you get from players comes from that, but it's also so this is also why we want to offer more than just one genre of game for players, because to give them different ways to experience it as well.
It's really smart to do that because there is, like you're saying, there's content that can go beyond just the game. A game can be turned into multiple different things, a TV series, a movie. All these things are part of what a game can be. And Lewis was saying the immersion that players have with games is like nothing else in the media. It's probably one of the most powerful immersive uh, mediums out there in terms of just playing. And also when you have a narrative involved, it can be both, obviously, because people are very passionate about games. So it's great to have, you can have different resources. You can pick and choose what kind of game you want to play on the same kind of universe.
Yeah, Christian is a writer of Life is Strange, which is a kind of a seminal narrative video game that just had its 10-year anniversary last
Yeah.
week. Right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, and we won the first Peabody Award for digital storytelling and BAFTA numerous awards and an incredible fan base that's still devoted to this day and far beyond than what a lot of people thought when it came out. So it just shows you the power of games and how they affect people on all levels, from Doom to Life is Strange and Call of Duty, et cetera, et cetera. It's such a powerful medium in whatever kind of game you're playing. And like I said, that immersive, the bonding that a player has with the game is just utterly unique to me. And it's not just because I'm in the industry. It's just, it is. It's a totally unique because you are the character, you are in that world. And that's what creates a really powerful kind of brand identity too. When people glom onto that and really love what you're doing.
That's cool. Hey guys, can I ask a question? I'm the dunce in the room here. I'm not in the industry, but a veteran. I've been talking to you guys, Matt, and especially you've taken your experience from your military experience and kind of inputted that into the design of the game. Can you just touch a bit about the special angle that's had on the game?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, one of the things that I found when was first in basic training was that infantry, there's basic combat engagement training for me was an eye opener to how games are portraying combat and how it's actually supposed to be handled in real life. And so for me is like certain part of these elements I've always wanted to integrate, and I've always looked at games and how they've implemented these elements and just thought that's not really why that is supposed to be happening. Simple idea is just a suppressing fire feature. Most games, they want to blur and smear your screen just so you can't see what you're shooting at. But in reality, you can see perfectly fine. It's the chaos of the situation. So a lot of these elements that I was taught in the military was just like, I played a lot of games in my gaming career and just seeing how it's done. And I just like always knew we could always just take it a bit better, make it a bit better. And then also the culture within the military as well. Like again, the 82nd Airborne, 3rd Infantry Division, two totally different kind of cultures, but one team, one fight. One is airborne, literally jumping out airplanes. I don't know why you do that. Perfectly good airplane. I don't know why. And the other one, we're rolling across the desert on armored fighting vehicles and infantry fighting vehicles. And it's just two different aspects. And so that for me was really just a projection of the military, sports, gaming. It all, if you marry that together, you could spit out what I've been dreaming of for the last 21 years, I think it is.
Yeah. A big reason that we're doing this is because we aren't seeing the kind of military combat game that we want, that we know to be more authentic. Like in our professional roles, we've done our best to put these kind of bring the authenticity to the games that we've worked on, like on Ghost Recon Wildlands I wrote on, which was a great narrative team. And so I was able to, narrative director, Sam Strackman, I think he might be here. He let me put in things like jokes about Sharkies, which maybe John, you know about, or maybe you're pretending you don't know about Sharkies, but things like Area J, things like that, which they're inside jokes, but anybody who's been in the military or been at Fort Bragg knows what these things are.
And make no mistake, we're not trying to create the most military of military games out there. We know that those games already exist. They're a dime a dozen. A lot of people are trying to go full blown role playing simulators. We're looking to just enhance and exaggerate the feeling of what it is like to be in combat and make sure it's fun. Like, we're really making sure that the game is absolutely fun. We're not trying to lock you down with, oh, you can only carry so many rounds of ammunition because it's stupid to carry anything more. Is the game fun or not? That's what we're running down towards. So.
Yeah. Oh, cool stuff, guys. What else you got, Lewis, before we move on here?
No, again, the things that we really value, the things that kind of differentiate us are we're trying to make authentic but accessible combat games, but we're also doing it in an economical way. Like lean production is really one of our things. We're not going to be set up so that we need to pay like salaries for like hundreds of people, which is where honestly a lot of the cost for a video game studio goes through. We're using what's traditionally been called like a shamrock studio or a shamrock business structure. But we're basically basing it off of like an independent film studio's kind of business. I worked, like I said, in independent film for a very long time. And then those studios would always be like one director and one producer. And then they would hire people to work with them, whether it be like a freelance person, the cinematographer, or like the composer. Like John Williams, he's not on salary. You know what I mean? He's freelance technically. And then they'll also work. We will also work with outsourcing studios as well. So we have a couple contracts with a couple different outsourcing studios, and that's comparable to a film studio working with like a special effects studio, like ILM or something, so that they get good lightsabers or something, right? But yeah, but we also, one of our things as veteran founders, we also do want to make sure that we honor veterans. And in addition to just doing it through the authenticity, right now we're exploring partnerships with a couple of different nonprofit organizations. And one of the things that we really hope to do is to have our game free for veterans and service members. But again, that's our broader mission from what we're going on. But yeah, so I guess we do have it's a little more gameplay footage. This is from our latest playtest. Again, this is all pre-alpha, just so you know. So it's basically like rough draft of the game, but you can still see how it plays. Like a lot of the major stuff that are going to end up in the final game are in here. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy watching it.
Yeah, so I'll play this one. This one's a little longer. I think it's just under 2 minutes. So we'll watch this and then I'll get a better flavor for it, like you said, and then we'll start talking about where you are with the capital raise. So folks, enjoy it, and we'll be back when it's over.
We got less than 2
Coming up
minutes.
the road.
Oh, yeah. I'd move up. The objective. Oh, guy right here to our left. Right behind that wall.
Oh, there's one inside.
He's on me. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one inside.
Yeah, no.
Coming in right behind
You're
you.
on the back. It's not dead.
I got him. I killed him.
They'll respawn because they got extra lives.
Yep.
Hello,
Oh, I got one.
Inside.
Oh,
that's it.
just threw him. What the? Got him.
Sweet.
Good.
Back up.
Oh, God. All right, I'm captured.
Wait.
They're
Okay,
here.
send anything out with.
Young man. I'm going to try capturing and see what we. Is that you? He's like, oh, shit. Oh, I see him.
Right, they should have been in the town now by their car.
He's the north side of town, north side across the street.
Rest. Any place to take That's good.
North across
See
the
him, let me
street.
see.
Yeah, he's crouched in the doorway. Yep. Crouched in the doorway. Oh, I'm getting surrounded. No! Oh, I didn't notice the cloth. I didn't notice the cloth. Oh, man.
Very
The
cool.
authentic. You only get the uncut cursing when you play along with Matt.
Yeah, I heard potty mouth there. I just picked up on that.
It's
Just
my
saying.
old military training. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 100% authentic right there. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so
why don't you drill down a little bit more on that, Lewis? What do we just see? And a couple of things to pick out of there would be helpful.
sure, yeah. So that was the mid session, towards the end of the session. Matt, yes, that was Matt playing there. So if you want to go ahead and
Yeah,
say
I can break it down. That was the last 2 minutes of one of the rounds we were playing. Simply just gotta find the objective, which is always changing within the space. There's a defending team and attacking team. I was on the attacking team in that video. And yeah, me and my buddy, I think Jeff was the guy in the video with me. We were assaulting the town and he got killed. I killed the guy who killed him. And then it's a scramble to try to get in there, capture the radio, but you need to have teamwork to do it. Obviously, I was alone in the end and didn't look at the clock and not Saved by the Bell this time. But it was a fun play test session. So,
yeah, I
and
think
I'm
you
not
get-
an esports player by any means at all. So I'm sure you get a coordinated team in there, it would become a different beast. That's for sure.
yeah, you can see some of the teamwork from the red team, but that was me. My aim was too bad to stop Matt in there, so he smoked me there. But yeah, we still slowed him down enough to still win the round because of the time. So just like any other sport, you got to run. You can run down the clock.
Let me put my MC hat back on. And Christian, I want to ask you a question. Now that the audience has seen that, like, how much does what you have expertise in and what you said earlier play a role in what we just saw in terms of the worlds and the storylines? Can you just like, because I'm a layman, not as expert, and many in the audience might be right where I'm at. Can you just elaborate on what you said earlier about how important what you bring to the table and the thought process is to that kind of game design?
In terms of what you just saw, it had very little to do with narrative per se, because that's you're going straight into action mode. But another game could be focused on more tactical elements. The game that we're talking about, the world building, so to speak, is that you would have a different game set in the same universe, the same geography, but you might be focused on a story, particular element, particular geography, and a particular goal. And there might be more characters involved, and the lore is part of the PvP. It's all connected. It's just a different kind of play element. And so I would be bringing more narrative, story, dialogue, character, and maybe a little more emotional content depending on the game. And also pulling in tactical elements of action and satisfy, of course, that portion of the game because that's part of the fun of the game, of course. And form follows function. And once again, you can, if you just want to do the PvP, you can go straight into there. And then you can, and if you want to do a different game that has a more story based world building that will connect, another type of game that can, there's first person shooters, there's role playing games, there's isometric, there's all these types of game styles and that you can play with. And that's what I love about the idea of Old Glory Studios is to tap into all these different game elements. Like Lewis was saying, you just might have want to spend an afternoon watching Clint Eastwood on TNT, or you might, and later on might want to watch, something completely different and have a different experience and maybe somewhat more emotional, connective experience to the characters or story as they're developed. So that's what I would be bringing to the table is more the narrative and story and dialogue, et cetera, if that helps you.
Cool. Very informative. Thank you. Lewis or Matt, anything to add to what Christian said?
You nailed it. I'm good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So this is the one of the advantages too with having the games in the different genres that some of the like literal game elements, like game assets, could also be repurposed for each game. So, for example, like the world you saw just now it looks great, but at the same time, it's not quite set in our unique world. Right now, we're already working with environment artists to get at least environment concept artists, and we have environment artists on set to build out that world into this kind of the post-apocalyptic world where the game is going to be set, and that's the Victory's Grave world. And then many of those elements, especially like the design and the concept phase, a lot of those resources will also be used. So all of it ends up being like a very efficient way to have production across several games.
Cool. Cool. Mike, anything about what's being said right now apply to like your expertise with team competitiveness and stuff? Anything to add there, if anything? I think you're on mute, Mike.
Yeah, I was sorry. The industry just needs fresher games with that incorporate the thought that Matt and Lewis have, like around multiplayer being very team oriented. There are a few out there, but they don't incorporate the features that I was talking about, where integration inside the game is there. For example, I can give plenty of examples, but like games like Call of Duty, which a lot of people have heard of, Counter Strike. These are very famous games that are played all over the world. When we have to compete in those games, the features aren't fully built into the games where a team can form in the game inside the actual interface of the game. Then the software, you can't form a team and then start competing against other teams and have a rank, and they reward prizes and things like that. It's all having to be done outside of the game software. We have to create third-party software to run tournaments. We have to create third-party software to show the broadcasts, stuff like that. As more games are being developed, I think you'll start to see more of this, but I think these guys have the right vision. That's
Yeah.
what will ultimately lead to a business opportunity in the future for investors, is getting ahead of the game.
Absolutely. I
No
want
pun
to add
intended.
that. Yeah. I want to add to that. Yeah, currently we're designing the game of football, and then we'll wrap the NFL around that integration of it as well. If we want to use a sports analogy example of what we're actually achieving here.
Wow, I can tell who's in charge of analogies over there at Old Glory Studios, man. Good one. Wow,
Thank you.
all right, let's talk about a world that I understand, and that's financial and fundraising. This image here talks about the capital raise we're in the middle of right now. And Louis, I'm going to turn it over to you to brief everyone on where we're at with this.
With this kind of Reg CF, we're allowed to raise a maximum amount. Our maximum is like rounding, it's $1.24 million. However, that's just the most that we can raise. So at this point, so far, we've raised 45,500. We still have certain like goals that we would like to get to, and with your help as investors to get to. So again, like if you can see our benchmarks here, if we just raise like 100K more, that gets us to the vertical slice of our game. So that's basically just making one level of the game in a highly polished way. As the numbers go up, like if we get 500,000, that gets us to the alpha, which is basically like a rough draft of the entire game. And if we get to the 1 million mark, then will allow Matt and myself to end up working on this full time. Because right now it's not a full time gig for either of us. But it will also help us to get jump started on production of our second project, which Christian is creative director on, which right now we're just calling Project Landfall. And then if we do reach the roughly 1.25 million, then that'll basically get us to at least on the production level, our early access version, like the beta version, which is early access release. For people who don't know, you release like a it's not as rough as what we were seeing, but it's not like necessarily the final product. But basically, you can release an early version of the game, and then that way, as you get more feedback from players and the public, then you can revise the game as you need to polish it to what it is to get it to be more of what they want. And then when you have your full release, which would hopefully be like a little later, then that was your 1.0 version of the release, is like that's the final version.
Cool. So it's not like an all or nothing thing. There are stages
No.
here where there's good phases of development product being put. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that
Yeah,
kind of what
no,
you're getting at?
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So these are the phases where we're at. This is still whether we raise the maximum amount or just reach one of the benchmarks. This is still our roadmap for funding as well. So the raise right now, the Reg CF, ends at the end of the month. And yeah, we'd really appreciate your help to helping us get further along in our production.
Yeah, thanks. And just an administrative note, you just quoted where we're at today, but that's likely to change. So if you're watching a recording of this, go to the site and you'll see the latest data. But this is a good illustration of the capital raising strategy and the tranches we hope to hit. I will say that to your credit, you very quickly got to your target, the minimum goal, and you're over and above that, but we're still on our journey here. So thank you for that. Anything else before we move on? Just some closing thoughts. You've seen this slide before. And like I said, you go to our website, follacapital.com. You can go to the Old Glory Studios page and you can see this page. Get all the information you need to make a conscious decision. But I just would like to take a minute to share with you some stuff I've learned raising capital for companies like Old Glory Studios. I also ran my own business for 17 years and raised capital the old fashioned way. And I want to cut through the fog on a kind of a very important issue. For many of you listening to these words right now, probably never have invested in a private company. Most Americans have not done that. Reg CF was actually part of the Jobs Act of 2012. Some rules were written by the SEC to enforce the law, and those rules came online around 2016. You really didn't see the beginning of the trend we're in, raising capital for private companies like Old Glory Studios till around 2016, 2017. So it's a fairly new way of companies like Old Glory Studios to raise money. And the point I want to make is this. When people use the word investor, a lot of people who never invested in a private company feel uncomfortable with that uh, term being used to describe them. You might invest in public markets, but very few of us historically have invested in a private company. But the word I like to use is supporter. If you like to support a company for whatever reason, if you like to support Old Glory Studios because you think they're building a cool game, that's great. If you like to support Old Glory Studios because you're a fellow veteran, that's great. If you like to support Old Glory Studios because I happen to be involved, that's great. I'm only kidding. But it comes down to this. You can support private companies now by investing in them. So not only, and it's not necessarily a giveaway, you're actually supporting them by investing in them and you're going along for the ride. So should they be commercially successful, you are sharing in that financial success. And that's why these things are designed the way they are and why Congress approved the Jobs Act to let a lot more Americans into the investment arena to invest in emerging private companies. So a little bit of a lecture there at the end, but think of yourself as a supporter first and maybe an investor. That's what I recommend you think about when you think about the potential of investing in Old Glory Studios. So with that, I'm going to give an alibi to anybody on the panel that might want to say something before we depart. Panel, anything to say?
Thanks for coming. We appreciate your attention, taking time out of your day to be here with us. And yeah, if you have any other questions, I think at least our LinkedIn's and stuff is in there. You can always reach out to us in there. And I'm sure a few of you actually know us personally, so feel free to ask us anything.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, well,
Thank you very much. Thank you, panel, for making the time. I actually learned a few things from this as well, even after our rehearsal, but I appreciate that. It's pretty exciting stuff. Thank you for being here, panel. And thank you, most of all, if you're a viewer, for taking a few minutes out of your day to be with us. We'll see you.